Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now, let's start. The grey waves crashed against the longship's hull as Rorik Grimson stood at the prow, his knuckles white around the carved dragon figurehead. Behind him, 30 warriors rowed in silence, their muscles straining against the fierce North Sea. The salt spray lashed his face, but he remained unmoved, his eyes fixed on the distant shoreline of Northumbria. "Land before nightfall," grunted Halvard, his father's most trusted warrior. "The tide favors us." Rorik nodded, saying nothing. The weight of command sat heavy on his shoulders. At 25 winters, he led his first raid since his father, Jarl Grim Haraldsson, had fallen ill with a wasting sickness. Success would cement his claim as heir, failure would embolden his cousins who already whispered that the gods had abandoned their Jarl's bloodline. "The settlement lies in the valley beyond that headland," Rorik said, pointing to a jutting cliff. "Small enough to overwhelm quickly, large enough for good plunder." What he didn't say was what truly haunted him, the bride price. Without wealth to offer, he could not secure his betrothal to Willa Thordottir, daughter of the most powerful family in their settlement. Already, her father's patience wore thin, and rumors spread that he considered other suitors. As dusk fell, they beached their ship on a secluded stretch of shore. Rorik led his men silently through dense forest until they reached the edge of the Saxon settlement. Smoke rose from thatched roofs, and the sounds of evening meals and conversation drifted toward them. "Remember," Rorik whispered to his men, "take what we can carry, silver, gold, anything of value. Any who resist die quickly. Women and children are not to be harmed." His warriors nodded grimly. Though young for a leader, Rorik had earned their respect through skill and fairness. They would follow his commands. "For Odin," he murmured, drawing his sword. "For glory." Their attack came swift as lightning. Torches were thrown onto thatched roofs, creating chaos as the Saxons stumbled from their homes. Rorik cut down 2 men who rushed him with farming tools, their blood spattering his mail shirt. All around him, screams and the clash of metal filled the night air. He kicked open the door of a large dwelling, expecting resistance. Instead, he found a single figure, a young woman with fierce blue eyes and hair the color of wheat fields. She stood with a small knife held before her, guarding an old man who cowled behind her. "Stay back, heathen," she spat in broken Norse, surprising him. Rorik hesitated, sword raised. "You speak our tongue." "Enough to tell you to leave or die," she replied, her knife steady despite the fear he could sense beneath her defiance. A crash from outside broke the moment. Rorik's second-in-command, Ulfric, appeared in the doorway. "The settlement is ours, Rorik. Good plunder in the church." The woman's eyes narrowed at the mention of his name, something dangerous flickering in them. "Bind these 2, Rorik commanded, gesturing to the woman and the old man. "They come with us." "My name is Willa," the woman said as Ulfric bound her wrists. "Willa Tancredsdottir. Remember it, Rorik Grimson, for it will be the last you hear before you die." Rorik met her gaze, something stirring within him, not fear but respect for her courage. Bold words for a captive. "I am no ordinary captive," she replied. "My father was Saxon, but my mother was of your people. I know your ways." This explained her knowledge of their language, but Rorik sensed she held back more than she revealed. He turned away, uncomfortable with the intensity of her stare. By dawn, they had loaded their plunder and captives onto the longship. The raid had been successful, silver from the church, stores of grain, furs, and a handful of thralls who would fetch a good price. Yet as they rode away from the smoldering settlement, Rorik found his thoughts returning to the half-Norse woman with defiant eyes. The journey back to their settlement in the Norse lands took 5 days. Throughout, Willa remained silent except when absolutely necessary, watching the coastline with calculating eyes. The old man, who Rorik learned was a priest named Father Ulrud, prayed constantly, his Latin mutterings irritating the warriors. When they reached the Jarl settlement of Ravholm, nestled in a protected fjord, Rorik's mood lifted. Smoke rose from familiar hearths, and children ran to the shore to witness their return. His mother, Astrid, waited at the docks, her face drawn with worry. "You return victorious," she said, embracing him. "Father?" Rorik asked. "Still with us, though weaker. He waits to hear of your deeds." As the warriors unloaded their plunder, Rorik noticed Thord Sinison waiting with his daughter Willa. She was beautiful in the traditional sense, tall, with honeygold hair braided elaborately and adorned with silver. Her face remained impassive as she assessed the wealth they'd brought back. "A successful raid," Thord said, his voice carrying for all to hear. "Perhaps worthy of a jarl's heir." Rorik bowed slightly. "I hope it proves my worth, both as leader and as suitor for your daughter." Willa's expression didn't change, but her father nodded, seemingly pleased. "We shall discuss terms at tonight's feast." As they spoke, Rorik became aware of Willa watching the exchange, something like mockery in her eyes. When the thralls were led away, she walked with her head high, refusing to show submission. That evening, the great hall echoed with celebration. Warriors recounted the raid, each tale growing more elaborate with each cup of mead. Rorik sat at the high table beside his father, who had been carried in on his bed to witness the festivities. Jarl Grim looked like a ghost of his former self, his once powerful frame now skeletal, but his eyes remained sharp. "You did well," the Jarl whispered. "But a leader must think beyond a single raid. The Saxon settlements grow more protected each season. We must find new lands to plunder or new ways to prosper." Rorik nodded, uncomfortable with his father's words. Raiding was their way, handed down from their ancestors. What other path could there be? Across the hall, Willa sat with her family, occasionally glancing toward Rorik. She had hardly spoken to him all evening, even as their betrothal was formally announced. The bride price had been set, half from the raid's plunder, half to be paid after the next season's trading. As the night progressed, Rorik slipped away from the celebration, needing air. Outside, stars glittered above the fjord, their light dancing on the dark water. He walked toward the thrall quarters, drawn by some impulse he didn't understand. There he found Willa, sitting outside the simple wooden structure where captives were housed. She had been given tasks in the kitchen during the feast but had apparently finished her duties. "You should be inside," he said. "It's cold." She looked up, her eyes reflecting starlight. "I prefer the cold to the stench of unwashed bodies." Despite himself, Rorik laughed. "You speak dangerously for a thrall." "Am I to be a thrall, then?" "I thought perhaps a sacrifice to your gods, or a gift to some warrior who caught your favor." "That depends on you," Rorik said, sitting on a nearby log. "Those who work well and adapt to our ways can earn their freedom eventually." Willa studied him. "The woman at the dock, she's to be your wife." "Winner?" "Yes, come spring. She looks at you the way one examines a horse for purchase." Rorik frowned. "Mind your tongue. She will be the lady of this settlement one day." "And you love her?" Willa asked, her tone genuinely curious rather than mocking. "Love? What has love to do with marriage? She brings an alliance with her father's powerful family. I bring the Jarl's bloodline. Together, we strengthen Ravhome." Willa shook her head. "Even among my mother's people, I heard tales of Vikings who married for love as well as advantage." "You know nothing of our ways," Rorik snapped, standing. "Return to your quarters before I have you whipped for insolence." As he stalked away, her voice followed him. "I know more than you think, Rorik Grimson. Much more." The following weeks brought changes to Ravhome. Jarl Grim's health deteriorated further, and the Council of Elders began to openly discuss succession. Though Rorik was the Jarl's only son, tradition allowed for challenges from other worthy men of the settlement. Rorik divided his time between learning governance from his father and training with the warriors. Each evening, he would visit Winna's family, making the appropriate gestures of courtship. She remained polite but distant, speaking mostly of household matters and the status their union would bring. Meanwhile, he found himself increasingly aware of Willa. She had been assigned to his mother's household, helping with weaving and food preparation. Unlike most thralls, she learned quickly and performed her duties without complaint, though her eyes never lost their defiant gleam. One afternoon, as snow began to dust the settlement, Rorik found Willa in the storeroom, inventorying preserved foods for the winter. "My mother says you work well," he said, startling her. "Your mother is fair," Willa replied, returning to her counting. "You've adjusted quickly to our ways." Willa set down her tally marks. "I told you, my mother was Norse. She taught me your language, your customs. Before she died, she made me promise to remember both sides of my heritage. Yet you lived among Saxons. My father was a Saxon merchant. After my mother died, he returned to his people, taking me with him. But he never forced me to forget her ways." She looked past him, her voice softening. "He was killed 3 years ago by Vikings from the east. Not your people, but others. I stayed in the settlement with Father Ulrud, who had taught me letters and numbers." Rorik felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. "Why tell me this? So you understand I am not just any thrall. I have value beyond cooking and cleaning." Before he could respond, shouts erupted from outside. They rushed from the storeroom to find warriors gathering around a newly arrived longship. The crew looked battered, several sporting bandages. "Danes," spat Halvard as Rorik approached. "They attacked our trading party near the Saxon shore. Killed for men, stole our goods." Rorik's blood ran cold. The Danish settlement to the south had long been rivals, but open attacks on trading parties violated the uneasy peace between them. "Did you recognize their leader?" he asked. "Ivar Bloodaxe," replied one of the wounded men. "He claimed we had encroached on their trading routes." That night, the council met in the Great Hall. Jarl Grim was propped up on furs, his breathing labored but his mind clear. "This cannot go unanswered," declared Thord Sillison. "If we show weakness, the Danes will take more than a few goods next time." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. "We should raid their settlement," suggested Ulfric. "Take back twice what they stole." "Winter approaches," Rorik countered. "Raiding season is over. The seas grow treacherous. So we wait while they mock us." Thord challenged. Perhaps Grim's son lacks the courage his father showed in his prime. The hall fell silent at the insult. Rorik felt his face flush with anger, aware that everyone watched for his reaction. "I fear no man," he said evenly. "But I will not risk warriors' lives on stormy seas for the sake of pride. When spring comes, we will have our vengeance." Jarl Grim raised a skeletal hand, silencing further debate. "My son speaks wisdom. We prepare through winter, strike when the weather favors us. Until then, send messengers to neighboring settlements. The Danes have broken peace, we must know if others will stand with us." As the council dispersed, Rorik noticed Willa watching him, her expression unreadable. When he approached, she spoke in a low voice. "My father believes you showed weakness tonight." "Prudence is not weakness," Rorik replied. "In a jarl's wife, perhaps. Not in a jarl." She touched his arm lightly. "You must prove yourself before spring, or my father may reconsider our arrangement." With that, she left him standing alone, cold dread settling in his stomach. Later that night, unable to sleep, Rorik walked to the training grounds. To his surprise, he found Willa there, awkwardly swinging one of the practice swords in the moonlight. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She whirled, nearly dropping the weapon. I was just." "Thralls are forbidden weapons," he said, striding forward to take the sword. "You could be flogged for this." "I need to protect myself," she said, not relinquishing the blade. "From what?" "You're safer here than in your Saxon village." "Am I?" Willa challenged. "I've seen how some of your warriors look at female thralls. And if the Danes attack?" Rorik sighed, understanding her fear. "No one will touch you without facing my mother's wrath. She's taken a liking to you. And when she's not watching? Or when the Danes come and there aren't enough warriors to defend the settlement?" Willa's voice hardened. "My mother taught me more than just your language, Rorik. She taught me that in her homeland, some women fought alongside men. Shield-Maidens, she called them. Rorik couldn't help but laugh. Shield-Maidens are mostly tales told around the fire. Few women actually. Before he could finish, Willa lunged, the practice sword moving with surprising speed. He barely parried with his own blade, which he'd drawn instinctively. My mother was one, Willa said, breathing hard. Before she met my father. She taught me some, though I was young when she died. Rorik stared at her with new eyes. Her stance was poor, her grip awkward, but there was natural quickness in her movements. Your mother must have been unusual among our people, he said finally. She was. As am I. Willa lowered the sword. Teach me. What? Teach me to fight properly. In return, I can teach you about the Saxons, their settlements, defenses, language. Knowledge that would help in future raids. Rorik should have refused immediately. Teaching a thrall, a female one at that, to fight was unheard of. Yet something in her determination resonated with him. Meet me here tomorrow night, he said, surprising himself. If anyone asks, you're delivering messages for my mother. As winter tightened its grip on Ravhome, a strange routine developed. By day, Rorik attended to his duties, trained with warriors, and made the required appearances with Willa. By night, he met Willa in secret, teaching her swordplay, shield work, and the basics of Viking combat. She proved a quick study, her determination compensating for her smaller frame. In return, she taught him Saxon phrases and customs, drawing maps of settlements and explaining their defenses. Why do you want to learn to fight so badly? He asked one night as they rested, breath clouding in the cold air. Willa was silent for a moment. When the Vikings killed my father, I could do nothing but hide and watch. I swore I would never be helpless again. Yet you didn't use your knife when I found you in your home. I knew I couldn't win, she said simply. Not then. But one day, I will be strong enough that no one can take what I love from me again. Something in her words stirred Rorik. He had trained since boyhood, following the path set for him without question. But had he ever felt such burning purpose? As they spoke more during these sessions, Rorik learned that Willa possessed a keen mind. She could read and write in both Saxon and Latin, skills rare among his people. She understood trade, numbers, and the politics of the Saxon kingdoms. Your people fight among themselves as much as they fight us, Rorik observed one evening. As do yours, she countered. Is that not why you fear challenge from Thord Silison's family if you appear weak? Rorik stared at her. How do you know this? Willa shrugged. Thralls are invisible. People speak freely around us. I listen. As midwinter approached, Jarl Grim's condition worsened. The settlement prepared for the Yule celebration with subdued spirits, knowing their Jarl might not see another spring. On the longest night of the year, the great hall blazed with firelight. Despite the solemnity of the Jarl's illness, tradition demanded feasting and gift-giving. Rorik sat beside his father's bed, which had been brought into the hall for the occasion. You've grown stronger these past months, the Jarl whispered to his son. I see it in how the warriors look to you now. I try to be worthy of your legacy, Rorik replied. My legacy? The old man's laugh turned into a cough. My legacy is this settlement, and the people in it. Remember, a Jarl protects more than he takes. That is true strength. Across the hall, Rorik noticed Willa serving mead, keeping her eyes downcast as was expected of a thrall. Yet he could see the strength in her movements, the quiet confidence she had developed. The celebration continued until winter approached, offering Rorik a finely embroidered cloak. A gift for my betrothed, she said formally. May it keep you warm in battle and bring you home safely. Rorik accepted it with proper thanks, presenting her with a silver brooch he had commissioned from the settlement silversmith. The exchange was witnessed by all, cementing their betrothal. Later in the evening, as songs and stories filled the hall, Rorik stepped outside for air. The night was clear and bitterly cold, stars sharp as spear points overhead. She gives fine gifts, came Willa's voice from the shadows. Rorik turned to find her standing near the wall of the hall. You shouldn't be out here. I finished my duties. No one noticed me leave. She stepped closer. The cloak is well made. Winner has skilled hands for needlework. And what else? Willa asked. What do you talk about when you're together? Rorik frowned. That's not your concern. No? Then why do you spend your nights teaching me instead of courting her? The question hung between them, dangerous and alluring. Rorik knew he should walk away, return to the hall, to Winner and his duties. Instead, he found himself stepping closer to Willa. Because you? He began, not knowing how to finish. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment. They stepped apart as Halvard rounded the corner. Rorik, your father asks for you, the warrior said, giving Willa a suspicious glance. I'll come right away, Rorik replied, not looking at Willa as he followed Halvard back inside. That night, sleep eluded him. His mind circled between duty to his father, his betrothal to Winner, and the unsettling pull he felt toward Willa. By dawn, he had made a decision that would change everything. He found Willa at the edge of the settlement, gathering firewood in the grey morning light. We can't continue our training, he said without preamble. She straightened, arms full of wood. Why? Have I not learned quickly enough? Too quickly, he admitted. People will notice soon. And there are complications. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You mean feelings that a jarl's heir shouldn't have for a thrall? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I've seen how you look at me when you think no one notices. It's the same way I look at you. Stop, Rorik commanded, though his voice lacked conviction. I'm betrothed to Winner. I will be jarl soon. There can be nothing between us. Nothing? Willa challenged. Then why did you teach me? Why do you seek me out? Before he could answer, shouts erupted from the watchtower. They both turned to see warriors running toward the shore, where ships had appeared on the horizon. Danes, Rorik muttered, immediately moving toward the commotion. Willa dropped her firewood and followed. 5 longships approached, their dragon heads cutting through the icy waters. The settlement erupted into activity, warriors grabbing weapons, women ushering children toward the forest, thralls securing livestock. They come to attack while they think we're weakened by winter and your father's illness, Halvard said as Rorik reached the shore. How many warriors? Rorik asked, counting the ships. At least 100, maybe more. Rorik assessed their situation quickly. We have 60 able fighters. Send riders to the nearest settlements for aid, though they may not arrive in time. As preparations for defense continued, Rorik noticed Willa helping organize the thralls, directing them with surprising authority. Their eyes met briefly across the chaos, and he saw the same thought in her expression. This was what they had feared. The Danish ships landed on the beach below the settlement. Rorik had positioned his warriors strategically, archers on the hillside, shield wall at the approach to the settlement, smaller groups hidden to flank the attackers once they committed to the assault. As the Danish warriors formed up on the shore, Rorik recognized their leader, Ivar Bloodaxe, a massive man with a red beard and a battle axe nearly as tall as a man. Rorik Grimson. Ivar called up the slope. Send out your father so we may speak. My father is ill, Rorik shouted back. I speak for Ravholm now. Ivar laughed, the sound carrying across the distance. Then it will be an easy day for us. The son is not the father, as our raid proved. Surrender your settlement and swear fealty to me, and I may let your people live. Anger surged through Rorik, but he kept his voice steady. We are free people. We kneel to no one. Then you die today. Ivar raised his axe, and the Danish warriors charged. The battle was fierce from the first clash. Rorik's strategy worked initially. The Danes suffered heavy losses from the archers and were slowed by the shield wall. But their numbers began to tell as the fighting continued. Rorik fought at the center of the shield wall, his sword slick with blood. Around him, his warriors held their ground, but he could see they were tiring. The Danes would eventually break through. "Fall back to the secondary position," he ordered, and his line retreated in good order to a narrower approach where fewer enemies could engage at once. As the battle shifted, Rorik caught glimpses of the settlement behind them. Most non-combatants had fled to the forest, but some remained, helping the wounded. Among them was Willa, her face set in determination as she dragged an injured warrior to safety. The fighting intensified. Rorik lost track of time, his world narrowing to the next strike, the next block, the next enemy. A Danish axe caught his shield, splintering it. He staggered, momentarily exposed. The axe wielder lunged forward, but before he could strike, a spear thrust past Rorik, taking the Dane in the throat. Rorik turned to see Willa, her face spattered with blood, gripping the spear she'd just used to save his life. "What are you doing?" he shouted over the din of battle. "Fighting," she replied, pulling her spear free. "As you taught me." Before he could respond, another wave of attackers pressed forward. Willa moved to his side, her spear a blur as she struck at any Dane who came within reach. Despite her smaller size, her speed and unexpected ferocity made her a formidable opponent. Inspired by her courage, the defenders found new strength. When Ivar Bloodaxe himself approached, cutting down two warriors with sweeping blows of his axe, Rorik and Willa moved together to confront him. "A woman fights beside you." Ivar laughed. "Has Ravholm fallen so low?" "This woman fights better than your men," Rorik replied, circling the Danish leader. Ivar attacked with brutal strength, his axe whistling through the air. Rorik parried the blow, the impact numbing his arm. As Ivar recovered for another strike, Willa darted in, her spear scoring a line across the Dane's thigh. Enraged, Ivar swung at her, but she had already danced away. The distraction gave Rorik the opening he needed. He lunged forward, his sword finding the gap between Ivar's mail shirt and helmet. The Danish leader dropped to his knees, blood pouring from his neck. "Ivar falls!" Rorik shouted, holding his sword high. "Ravholm stands!" A cry went up from the defenders as the Danish warriors faltered, seeing their leader fallen. At that moment, horns sounded from the forest edge, reinforcements had arrived from neighboring settlements. The Danes broke, retreating to their ships under a hail of arrows. Some made it back to the vessels, others fell on the beach. By the time the sun began to set, the surviving Danish ships were disappearing over the horizon. The victory celebration was subdued. Though they had driven off the attackers, Ravholm had lost 17 warriors, and many more were wounded. The settlement had been damaged in the fighting, and winter still gripped the land. In the aftermath, Rorik found himself faced with a new reality. Word of Willa's actions during the battle spread quickly. Some warriors were outraged that a thrall, a woman, had taken up arms. Others, those who had seen her fight, spoke with reluctant admiration. More troubling were the whispers about how Rorik and Willa had fought together against Ivar, moving in such harmony that they seemed to anticipate each other's actions. Such coordination came only from training together, training that had clearly been happening in secret. Thord Sigurdsson confronted Rorik in the Great Hall the day after the battle. "You trained a thrall woman to fight," he accused. "Against all tradition." "I trained someone willing to defend Ravholm," Rorik replied evenly. "And yesterday proved the wisdom of that decision." "It proves nothing except your disregard for our ways," Thord spat. "My daughter will not marry a man who elevates thralls above their station." Before Rorik could respond, a weak voice spoke from the jarl's bed nearby. "Is that so, Thord? Would you break a betrothal because my son found strength where others saw only weakness?" Jarl Grim had been listening, his sunken eyes now fixed on Thord with surprising intensity. "This is not about strength," Thord argued. "It's about proper order. Women do not fight. Thralls do not bear arms." "Yet this woman fought," the jarl countered. "This thrall helped save our settlement when your own sword remained sheathed." Thord's face flushed with anger. "I was organizing our defenses." From a safe distance, Halvard muttered, loud enough for all to hear. The tension in the hall was broken by the arrival of Winna. She walked directly to Rorik, her face composed but her eyes cold. "Is it true?" she asked. "You've been training this thrall woman in secret?" Rorik met her gaze. "I have." "And you fought beside her against Ivo Bloodaxe?" "We did. She helped me kill him." Willa nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. "Then I release you from our betrothal, Rorik Grimson. I will not be second in your heart to a Saxon thrall." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Thord stepped forward, face purple with rage, but Willa silenced him with a gesture. "This is my decision, father. I have seen how he looks at her. All have seen it." She removed the silver brooch he had given her at Yule and placed it in his hand. "Find happiness with your Shield-Maiden, Rorik. I will find mine elsewhere." With dignity, she walked from the hall, her father following after casting a venomous glance at Rorik. In the silence that followed, Jarl Grim beckoned his son closer. "You face a choice now," the old man whispered. "The path of tradition, or the path of your heart. Choose wisely, for either will shape Ravhome's future." That night, Rorik found Willa by the shore, looking out at the dark water. She had been given separate quarters after the battle, neither thrall nor free woman, her status uncertain. "Winner broke our betrothal," he said without preamble. Willa turned, her face illuminated by moonlight. "I know. The entire settlement knows. She thinks I have feelings for you. Do you?" Rorik moved closer. "I don't know what I feel. Only that when we fought together, it felt right in a way nothing has before." "And now?" Willa asked. "What happens to me?" "To us?" "That depends on what we choose," Rorik said. "My father says I must either follow tradition or follow my heart." "And what does your heart say?" Instead of answering with words, Rorik closed the distance between them. Their kiss was tentative at first, then hungry with the release of long-suppressed desire. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "That answers one question," Willa said softly. "But many remain. Your people will not accept a former thrall as your woman, let alone as a jarl's wife." "Some will not," Rorik agreed. "Others saw your courage yesterday. They will come to respect you, as I have. And if they don't, then we will show them, together." Spring arrived with both sorrow and hope for Ravhome. Jarl Grim passed peacefully in his sleep as the first buds appeared on the trees. The settlement mourned for 7 days, as was custom, before gathering at the Thing assembly to confirm Rorik as the new jarl. The proceedings did not go as planned. Thord Sillison, still bitter about the broken betrothal, challenged Rorik's right to succession. "A jarl must uphold our traditions," Thord declared to the assembled people. "Rorik Grimson has shown disregard for our ways. He elevates a thrall woman to warrior status. He spurned my daughter's honorable alliance. He is unfit to lead." Murmurs of both agreement and dissent rippled through the crowd. Rorik stepped forward, his voice carrying across the assembly field. "I stand before you as my father's son and heir. In battle against the Danes, I proved my worth as a leader. Yes, I trained Willa to fight, and because of that, she helped save our settlement. The old ways have value, but so too does recognizing strength wherever it may be found." The debate continued, growing heated. Finally, in accordance with tradition, the matter was put to a vote. The settlement's free men and women placed stones in 2 piles, one for Rorik, one for Thord's preferred candidate, his nephew Gunnar. When the counting finished, Rorik had won, but by a margin narrow enough to be concerning. As jarl, he would need to heal the division within the settlement. His first act was unexpected. During the feast celebrating his confirmation, Rorik stood before the assembled people and called Willa forward. "Yesterday, you confirmed me as your jarl," he said. "Today, I ask you to witness another choice. This woman fought to protect Ravhome when others might have fled. She has proven her worth not as a thrall, but as a warrior." He turned to Willa. "I declare you free, and more, I name you Shield-Maiden of Ravhome, the first in many generations. Shock rippled through the hall. Some cheered, others muttered in disapproval. A jarl needs a strong partner, Rorik continued. Someone who will stand beside him in both peace and war. He took Willa's hand. I ask you now, before all our people, will you stand with me, not as thrall or servant, but as my equal, my wife? Willa's eyes widened. This was not what they had discussed. You risk much, she whispered. I risk everything, he agreed quietly. But for the right cause. She straightened, addressing not just Rorik but the entire hall. I accept, on one condition, that I be judged by my actions, not by my birth or by old prejudices. Rorik nodded. So be it. Their marriage the following month was unlike any Ravhome had seen before. Some families boycotted the ceremony, including Thord's. But many attended, curious or supportive, and as spring turned to summer, the settlement began to adapt to their unusual jarl and his Shield-Maiden wife. Willa proved herself not just in combat but in governance. Her knowledge of Saxon ways and language opened new trading possibilities. When Rorik led the promised retaliatory raid against the Danish settlement, she remained in Ravhome, managing affairs with surprising skill. By the time they reached their first winter together, even some who had opposed their union had come to respect their leadership. The settlement prospered, and when word came that Winna had made an advantageous marriage to a jarl from the eastern fjords, Rorik sent gifts and good wishes without regret. One snowy evening, as they sat by the fire in the jarl's quarters, Willa traced the scar on Rorik's arm, a memento from their battle against Eivor. Do you ever regret your choice? She asked. The easier path would have been to marry Winna, follow tradition. Rorik pulled her closer. The easier path is rarely the right one. My father understood that better than I gave him credit for. He kissed her forehead. Besides, what jarl wouldn't want a Shield-Maiden by his side? You've saved my life twice now. Only twice. Willa laughed. I count at least 3 times. Then I'm fortunate indeed. Rorik's expression grew serious. The Danish settlements to the south are uniting under a new leader. Saxon kingdoms grow stronger in the east. Change comes, whether we wish it or not. Then we will face it together, Willa said. As we have faced everything else. Outside, snow fell softly on Ravhome, covering the settlement in pristine white. Within the jarl's hall, the fire burned bright, illuminating the unlikely pair who had defied tradition to forge a new path, a Viking warrior and his once-rejected bride, now the Shield-Maiden on whom his survival had twice depended, and whose love had transformed not just his life, but the future of their people.